And the Telangana police have issued a press note on this Indian connection to the Bondi Beach bloodbath. The Telangana police in a statement said, and I quote, Sajid Akram is originally from Hyderabad, India. He completed his BCom degree in Hyderabad and migrated to Australia in search of employment approximately 27 years ago in November 1998. He subsequently married Venera Grosso, a European origin woman, before settling down permanently in Australia. They have one son, Naveed, and Naveed is one of the two attackers, and one daughter. Sajid carries an Indian passport as on date, and his son Naveed Akram and daughter were born in Australia and are Australian citizens. The note then goes on to say, as per information available from his relatives in India, Sajid Akram had limited contact with his family in Hyderabad over the past 27 years. He visited India on 6 occasions after migrating to Australia, primarily, according to neighbors and family members in India, for family-related reasons such as property matters and visits to his elderly parents. According to the Telangana police, they believe he did not travel to India even at the time of his father's demise. The family members have expressed no knowledge of his radical mindset or activities, nor of the circumstances that led to his radicalization. The factors that led to radicalization of Sajid Akram and his son Naveed appear to have no connection with India or any local influence in Telangana, according to the state police. Telangana police have no adverse record against Sajid Akram during his stay in India or prior to his departure in 1998. The Telangana police say they remain committed to cooperating with India's central agencies and other counterparts as and when required. Of course, they've urged the public and the media to avoid any speculation or attribution without verified facts, unquote. Now, this brings us to a worrisome development. It's a worrisome development for Australia and for India. Some reports seem to indicate Sajid Akram's son got radicalized. He was under investigation in Australia for being in the company of suspected ISIS module members, and apparently the father got looped in. But were they part of a bigger terror module? And should red flags have gone up both in Australia and in India? Joining me on India First with the latest on this very worrisome story, Charles Thompson, a journalist from Australia. Charles, welcome back. Zafar Sareshwala is former Chancellor of the Maulana Azad National Urdu University. Also with me is Professor Vikram Singh, former Director General of Uttar Pradesh Police, someone who's dealt both with the radicalization that had increased and de-radicalization efforts that were undertaken by India's security forces. But before I come to both of you gentlemen, I want to cut across to Charles Thompson. Charles, are there any new details available about Sajid Akram and Naveed Akram's radicalization journey?
It's really difficult to say because look, we all get the feeling in Australia that the government and particularly the politicians want to say as less as possible. The idea that somehow these two gentlemen just did it all by themselves, had nothing to do with anybody else, is preposterous. And at the moment, I can tell you, I don't think the Prime Minister of Australia is really understanding the depth of anger in Australia, not just from the Jewish community, but from the Australian community at large. There were certain steps that were taken before for a report to be made and suggestions to be made. And at the same time, they decided to make 2 reports. They got one report, which was called the Siegel Anti-Semitism Report. And then they decided to get another one called the Malik Islamophobia Report. And then they just picked and cherried and did a couple of things. So the Australian government at the moment is in a hugely difficult situation. And the idea the Prime Minister thinks that just gun laws are going to be changed and this is going to solve the problem, he's not fooling anyone.
Yeah, changing gun laws is one part, but de-radicalization should be a bigger challenge perhaps. But Professor Vikram Singh, should alarm bells be ringing in India? An Indian passport holder involved in killing innocent people in Australia, and specific religious targeting of Jews, the manner in which Hindus were targeted in Pahalgam, Jews were targeted in Australia, in Sydney.
Very much, Gaurav ji. Good evening. Alarm bells sounding should have been a foregone conclusion, and the alert has already been sounded all across India, especially in cities like Bengaluru, Goa, Mumbai, Himachal Pradesh, Delhi, etc., in view of the forthcoming Christmas and the New Year's festivals. But the fact of the matter is that the radicalization is an epidemic which is both malicious and malignant. It does not happen overnight. It grows from strength to strength, it evolves, and then it takes a militant form, as in the case of Australia, tragically. And yes, there are telltale signs, these alarm bells. We have to be very watchful and vigilant in the sense that a person goes to Philippines, he is under observation, he has 6 weapons. Then the manner in which we discussed it yesterday, Gauravji, on your show, that the manner, the stance, and his handling of the weapon and firing 4 rounds in 4 seconds goes to show his military training and also training by the extremists. That goes to show that, yes, we could have done much, much better just by being alert and vigilant. His companionship visit to Philippines, having a disproportionate number of weapons, and indeed, his site visits and also his online history and the visit to objectionable sites were the indicators and the red flags that should have prevented, that should have, at least in short, preventive detention. I don't know whether that is possible in Australia or not, but in India, such a thing would have invited UAPA, preventive detention, and this man would have been behind bars for no fewer than 5 years, minimum, as in the case. And to your first question, Gauravji, you missed out UP. We had 3 ISIS activists arrested from
Yes.
Lucknow and 1 neutralized in Lucknow.
And 1 neutralized. Absolutely, sir. Zafar Sareshwala, we have by and large believed Indian Muslims are different, more rooted to the culture of this land. But should red flags have gone up, for example, with Sajid Akram? I'll come to other instances in just a moment, sir.
See, Gaurav, I have been to Australia. In fact, as a backpacker, when I just graduated in 87, I traveled Australia coast to coast. From Perth, I went to Heidelberg, top south, Sydney. From Sydney, I traveled to Brisbane, Darwin, down Adelaide, and also Melbourne, and also interior Canberra. I also went to the mining towns deep inside. So
Okay.
Australia always was one of the best countries I'd ever been. After that, also in last 3 years, I went there twice or thrice. See, the problem is, I'll tell you, all these people there are. I mean, I as a Muslim, I know such characters, very minority, but they exist within us. And you know what, Gaurav? All these people, the so-called jihadis of the world, they work clandestinely. Why on earth they recruit people through dark web? In fact, when they recruit people, the parents also don't know. So
Yes.
mainstream Islamic organizations are there in the country. Like Tabligh Jamaat is there, Jamaat-e-Islami is there, Jamaat-e-Ahle Hadith is there, Jamiatul Ulama is there. They're all in open. But these people, they work deep inside because they know that the Muslim ethos is against that. And what they are doing, they are radicalizing the youth through the dark web. And even the parents don't know. So actually, which I've been doing since last so many years, we're doing this initiative called Talim o Tarbiyat. We have done in 67 cities in the country. And apart from education, we also have a module on de-radicalization. And I myself talk to the parents that it is your duty, your children, what internet they are watching, what are they watching, because we don't even know. The parents won't even know. So this
Sir, यहाँ तो बाप भी आतंकी
de-radicalization.
है, बेटा भी आतंकी है. What do you do in this situation? What can parents do when the father himself is a gun-wielding terrorist? The son is a gun-wielding terrorist. How does one deal with that threat? And I completely agree with you, sir. Parents have a very big role unless they end up being terrorists themselves, like in this case. But take the case of that Dr. Ahmad Mohyuddin Sayyed. He's a medical doctor by profession. He wanted to inject poison in prasad of Hindu pilgrims and mass killings of Hindu devotees, or those doctors of doom at Al Falah University. How does one deal with this situation, sir?
Gaurav, I faced them myself directly when we did this first program of Talim o Tarbiyat in Srinagar. Then we also did in Pulwama, in Shopian, in Poonch, in Kargil. I was threatened. How on earth you are coming and giving education to our children? I had faced, in fact, when we were doing in Pulwama, we could barely manage to do the men program. But the girls program, which we were doing in the girls polytechnic in Pulwama, we had to shift. And the
My
military,
God.
they took me. They took me, Zafar bhai, aapko threat hai. And what threat for what? I was teaching their youth basic finance, basic capital market, and entrepreneurship. They don't want. In fact, I had a big showdown with them. I said, देखो मैं डरने वालों में से नहीं हूं. मैं यहाँ आके प्रोग्राम करूंगा और आप जिसकी अलमबरदारी करते हो, जो पाकिस्तान से जो आपको अक्रॉस द बॉर्डर से हथियार फेंकते हैं, जब बिकॉज इट वाज इमीडिएटली आफ्टर कोविड, तो कोविड में जब
Okay.
भूख मरा हुआ था आपके यहाँ, तो अनाज क्यों नहीं भेजा आपके लिए? मतलब उनको आपसे कोई मोहब्बत नहीं है, सिर्फ आपके कंधे इस्तेमाल करते हैं अपने मफाद को पूरा करने के लिए. एंड व्हेन आई लेफ्ट इन 2023, I told people there that there are very minority within you. If you don't confront them now, it will create a big problem for you.
No,
And
put
it
them
has
in
created.
jail. You know, name those people who threatened you. They belong to jail. But Charles Thompson, you know, Naveed, for example, was under investigation for links with an ISIS module in Australia. So how serious is this threat? Is it self-radicalization? Is it radicalization through any religious institution, any masjid, any madrasa, any educational institution in Australia? Do we have more details, sir?
No,
Okay,
these are.
the first.
I'll just add.
No.
Just add. Yeah, let me add a little bit. They are
Okay.
self-radicalized.
No, but are they
And they
self-radicalized?
live in their own world.
Are they self-radicalized? Or are we, you know, kind of, we need to figure this out. How many people are getting self-radicalized in so many parts of the world, Mr. Thompson?
Okay, so look, I concur with the former gentleman. He spoke very elegantly, but let me just focus on one thing. The reason why we in Australia now are so angry with our Prime Minister and our Home Minister is they're not tackling it directly. The issue here is, look, I believe that our intelligence services in Australia are doing a marvelous job. They do the reports, but the reports are not acted upon. The Prime Minister and the Home Minister are not tackling the problem. The previous gentleman identified it. There are a few bad apples, and those bad apples have to be found. And that means inconvenience for all of us. But the public has to know that that inconvenience is going to be there to find those bad apples and either remove them or put them under proper surveillance. And we're not hearing that from the Australian Prime Minister. You see, the hero in the whole of this is a Muslim gentleman. So my heart goes out to the larger Muslim population.
Oh,
but the Australian
absolutely.
government is not taking it on because they think that they might upset their vote bank in their electorates.
So you're saying it's vote bank politics, whether it's Australia or different parts of the world, Dr. Vikram Singh. This isn't a problem of one region in the world. This ISIS-style radicalization is putting people in harm's way, you know, in whether it's Europe or Australia, United States or India. How do you fight this? Because the moment you even raise the issue, there are those who will cry Islamophobia.
Mr. Charles Thompson has very cogently and very logically enumerated that the reports are there, the agencies are professional, but they are not acted upon. And if the reports are not acted upon, there is little that one can do about it to set the course correction. Now, I would strongly advise that those who would be interested in greater details, please see the book written by Professor Jessica Stern of Harvard University on radicalization, the problems, and the control strategies. But yes, it is easier said than done because it is either self-motivated or there are vested interests, special interest groups, and then there are those perhaps who want to be just Mr. Right, that they should not be branded as fascist or Islamophobic or say perhaps in some other epithet may be labeled to them. Therefore, I do to be doubly cautious, not to be labeled as Islamophobic, then or a racist. I think that is too heavy a price that one has to pay for national security. Australia could have been very well safeguarded if an action had been taken and preempted this attack, because both the father and son, or at least the son, was on the radar, and yet nothing, no action was taken, lest the agencies were branded as racist or Islamophobic. Well, in any case, if you do anything, even then you'll be labeled. If you don't do anything, even then you'll be
Yes.
labeled. Therefore, with malice toward none, but firmness in the right, the law should take its own course, and then one should come
Without
down
fear
like a
of
ton of
favor,
bricks.
irrespective whether somebody cries Islamophobia, it's actually terrorphobia. Nobody wants to be killed by terrorists. And those who give this enabling cover fire to terrorists, they should be probed whether they are beneficiaries of the wider terror networks. Zafar Sareshwala, when Sajid Akram, you know, many would think he lives a life that people dream of, or this Dr. Mohyuddin Ahmad, or the doctors of doom at Al Falah University, those who are part of this module that carried out the Delhi terror attack. Sir, they have the best of education, they have respect in society, they have stature, and yet they choose the path of killing innocents in the name of religion. Why do you think this happens, and how should one combat it, since you've dealt with the problem and are working on solutions?
See, it is, I'll tell you, it is the duty of the Muslim community. Because to say that it doesn't exist, no, it is there. Yes, there is a big, very small minority. But as the gentleman said, even two rotten apples will destroy the whole garden. So yes, we need to take head on the Muslim community. That's why I always say that the saner voices of the Muslim community should be brought on the television network. Unfortunately, what's happening, and I'm not blaming you, most of the Muslims who come on national television, you have a very standard 3-inch ki topi, 6-inch ki dadi, bade bhai ka kurta, chote bhai ka pajama. And they talk rubbish. These are the people mostly brought on television across the country. So
Sir, we
there are
always try to
large.
bring people like you, sir, intelligent people who have the good of the country at their heart.
That's why it is the duty of the Islamic clerics and the sane voices of the community to get into it and take it head on. So, see, I have no whether this Sajid is from Hyderabad or India or anywhere, but he is a terrorist. And his
Yes.
ideology, wherever it must have come, it was rooted in Australia. But, and you know, ISIS, the 90% killings done by ISIS are Muslims. And most of these terror networks, they have threatened Muslims. In fact, I was threatened in Kashmir.
Yes.
So we need to come out and take them head on, destroy their radicalization with de-radicalization effort right at the outset. Of course, you have to accept that disease is there and you need to take it to its conclusion by curing it.
Okay, Charles Thompson, will Australia probe this in the right earnest, or bury it under the carpet, or treat terror with kid gloves, as you say, for vote bank politics? What's your apprehension? What's your understanding, sir?
See, the difficulty is that they thought they were smart, the Home Minister and the Prime Minister, by getting the Siegel anti-Semitism report, but they didn't follow through on it. So most of the recommendations were ignored. Now, let's be factual. Let's move away from the Muslims for a moment and let's think about the Jewish community. If you have a Jewish synagogue or if you have a Jewish celebration, and our intelligence chief warned before, and we have known that, and you've seen, I'm sure you've seen in front of the Opera House and on the Sydney Harbour Bridge, some of the statements made about the Jewish community were absolutely hideous and disgusting. Now, what has to be done is those points, and whether it's a Hindu temple, the police have to be undercover, and those people who mean harm can be caught. Why has our Prime Minister and why has our Home Minister been so slack on the job? And now, you see, in these times of crisis, the politician or the Prime Minister or the Home Minister of the country, their real talent shines. And I'm afraid to say at the moment, nothing is showing from the Home Minister and nothing is shown from the
No,
Prime
it's
Minister.
interesting you
And
should
if I
point
just
out
may
whether
add,
it's the Jewish community in Australia or the Hindu community in Australia, because we've seen a lot of targeted attacks on Hindus and on Sikhs, whether it's happening in Australia or in parts of Europe or in the United States of America. And that clearly, Dr. Vikram Singh, is not freedom of expression. Everyone has the right to pray and live with dignity. Unfortunately, that's not happening in a lot of these Western countries. But my question, Dr. Vikram Singh, has India dealt with terror with kid gloves in the past, and are we still apprehensive about going for the jugular to destroy that radical Islamist terror mindset of Islamic State, terrorism. They're either self-styled modules, or whether there are madrasas, or isolated instances like Zakir Naik, who may be indoctrinating these people, like in the case of Bangladesh terror attack. What turns doctors into demons, for example, in the case of the Delhi terror attack? Dr. Vikram Singh, you're on mute, sir.
Gaurav ji, I take you
Go on,
back to
sir.
2611 when they said 26/11 ek RSS ki sajish, when Barni, Digvijay Singh and Mahesh Bhatt released a book, and that of course was withdrawn later. Then to whitewash this entire episode, what to talk of dealing it with iron hand, they in fact tried to whitewash. And Dr. Zakir Naik, whom you mentioned, was given the title an apostle of peace and made to deliver lecture in the National Academy of Administration, the training ground for the IES and the National Police Academy, because he was supposed to be an apostle of peace. We could have done much, but now India is dealing with, and in a very exemplary manner, and there would be lessons for anyone who tries to cross the rule of law and there transgresses the rule of law. Now, Gauravji, we have our own SOPs, and they have proved and they have stood the test of time. But now the time has come to come down even more heavily, and the indoctrination will have to be dealt with very firmly, both online, offline, and whether it is at an individual level or through the likes of Zakir Naik or Tablighi Jamaat or Jaish-e-Mohammed. But that has to come down, and there has to be an SOP for de-radicalization and also rehabilitation of those who are now de-radicalized.
The last 30 seconds I have on this part of the show, Zafar Sareshwala ji, the Prime Minister says, ek haath mein Quran, ek haath mein computer, ek haath mein stethoscope, or words to that effect. How does one ensure that this minuscule minority that you speak of that gets radicalized, that the wider community comes around and ensure they identify and isolate, detect these elements so that then action can be taken against them? And in the long run, so for example, because of this Sajid Akram, I'm sure others who are seeking a visa will have to go through enhanced scrutiny, or others will now have to go through enhanced scrutiny. How does one ensure that the wider community is able to isolate these elements?
See, unfortunately, as I said earlier, this is happening clandestinely. In fact, I remember in, I think, 2018, Honorable Rajnath Singh ji, when he was the Home Minister, he said on the floor of the Parliament, in India, we have only identified 18 or 19 totally who have gone with ISIS. And he said, and even those we came to know through their parents. Yes. So even the parents didn't know. So from of 250 million Muslims, maybe 100 such characters. But yes, those 100 are also very dangerous. We need to educate. In fact, the other day I was speaking to the youth. I said, come on, for God's sake, what has happened in Gaza? It is not the Jews who have done. It is the Netanyahu government. You need to distinguish between Zionists and the Jews, Islamists and Islam, Christianity and evangelical. So you don't.
Either ways, अपना career बनाओ. वहाँ क्या हो रहा है उसके लिए अपना देश क्यों जलाओ? This is something, I mean, basic. Look for a future. How does one ensure that happens?
No, we have to see. In fact, I tell people that आज हम हिंदुस्तान में जो जी रहे हैं इतने इत्मीनान से, यहाँ जो सेक्युलरिज्म है ये हिंदू की वजह से. अगर इस मुल्क का हिंदू अगर communal होता, if the Hindus of this country would have been communal, then we wouldn't have been able to live for a day. This is what we are living today. I mean, okay, some lynching here and there, and some things happening on the Twitter, some right-wing, ultra-right-wing, but majority Muslims are living in peace because the Hindus of this country are secular and they want you here. So why are you creating this atmosphere? So already a lot of people are working. In fact, I've been seeing since last 1 year in lot of Friday sermons, the imams are speaking against this kind of attitude, terrorism, de-radicalization. At least this effort has started now.
I'm so glad it has. And the last 30 seconds I have, Dr. Vikram Singh, what is being preached from pulpits? What's being preached behind closed doors? Do we need closer scrutiny? And that can only happen from within the community, sir. That needs to intensify, and especially in areas where a larger number of people are emerging to join the mindset of whether it's the Islamic State or Lashkar-e-Taiba or the Resistance Front or whatever name you may give to any ideology that talks about killing innocent people.
Gauravji, this surveillance has to go on. I would not say surveillance, but close observation and monitoring has to go on behind the doors through the family elders, through the responsible and the elderly members of the community, as also the khutbah and the sermons being given on the Friday prayers, as Zafar Sahab had mentioned. Those khutbahs are very important because they go right up to the masses and they have a mass appeal because they come from a person who's very highly respected within the community. But there is a standard operating procedure how to monitor that. We depend on not only the family elders, those who are friendly to the police and army pensioners, but also we have own ways and means not to be disclosed to get whatever is happening at the front in the pulpit and within closed door also, because that is of extreme importance and relevance.
Okay. Zafar Sareshwala, Charles Thompson and Dr. Vikram Singh for joining me on this part of the debate. Many thanks.